Am I surprised with what I'm seeing as of right now when it comes to Onyx? No. And the reason why is because even with this around 6% recovery in the case of Onyx in the past 24 hours, it's still around 8 times away from its peak last year. I am literally not joking. But even besides that point, I'll give my thoughts in today's video, even though I am not telling anyone to do anything and nothing I say is financial advice. So if we take a look at it, in the case of Onyx, people sometimes like to tell me, well, it's so shocking that it recovered around 6% in the past 24 hours. I thought people forgot about this. Well, let's let this sink in for a second. Onyx is focused on the global trade and finance market within this space, right? And when I say that, oftentimes people like to say, well, it has too much competitors. Well, I don't think that's true, by the way. Because if we take a look at Ripple and Stellar, it's number 1 and number 2 when it comes to popularity within that niche. Now we take a look at XDC, Zebix there, arguably Onyx. We take a look at Swiftcoin, XPR. That's not like 10 different projects that are that popular. So when it comes to that niche, it really doesn't have too many dynamic and popular competitors. Now, yes, it has very good competitors, but it doesn't have the quantity. It has the quality in terms of the competition, but not the quantity again, right? So it's not like Onyx is up against 20 or 30 different projects that are kind of similar to it. Not necessarily when it comes to its own niche. And if we take a look at it, the global trade and finance market, when it comes to this space, in terms of that specific niche, it is typically not a market that gets forgotten about like that. Historically, we've seen time and time again, Ripple and Stellar, sure, they've experienced some times when people didn't care about it, but that space has stayed a little bit evergreen in a sense where it's been through multiple bear markets and that niche has continued to kind of survive through that. And again, if there is a project within that niche that is arguably top 10 in terms of popularity, which I think Onyx is, I find it pretty difficult as to how this would get forgotten about randomly like that. Sure, Onyx has never become top 10 or top 20, but it's still pretty popular within its own niche. So when people like to ask me, oh, am I surprised with this 6% recovery in the past 24 hours? Well, not really, if I take a look at all of that, right? If I take into consideration what I've just mentioned before. Not to mention, Onyx is improving constantly in 2026. I'm not joking. This year, the mainnet launched when it comes to its layer 1. And also, the Onyx Mesh, or should I say Onyx Mesh, that launched this year as well. Keep in mind, many people think or assume, right, that usually when a project launches its own blockchain and it actually goes into mainnet, and let's say their native token is literally used for gas fees on that, they often view that as the coming full circle type of moment. They view it oftentimes as a time when the project is really kind of doing its thing fully and actually having the use case, because again, it kind of completes the story where the token is actually being used for gas fees on that specific blockchain that the project made or whatever, right? And Onyx didn't achieve something similar. Onyx, in terms of the mainnet, in terms of the layer 1, launched this year, and then Onyx is used for gas fees on there. Not to mention 10% of gas fees when it comes to the layer 1 is burned. So we gotta let that sink in. Onyx in 2026 just started to have the coming full circle type of moment. It just started this year. So when people like to say, oh, the peak of Onyx was in 2025, well, not really. In terms of fundamentals, I don't think so. Okay, yeah, I mean, in terms of the price, it's way lower than before. Like in terms of market cap, it's around 8 times away from its peak last year. But in terms of the fundamentals, it just got way better this year. And I think the fundamentals this year is the best it's ever been. So when people like to tell me, oh, this is a cooked project. Well, actually in 2026, they've been cooking quite the opposite. They've been cooking Gordon Ramsay's style, because launching the mainnet of their layer 1 and then launching Onyx Mesh this year, that's no easy task. And then we saw the Onyx Explorer come into fruition. So they're doing things, especially this year. Now, people like to tell me, is Onyx done for? Is this like the peak of it? Well, again, I mean, it's still around 8 times away from its peak last year. So if I were to equate this to like an analogy, for instance, this is like, for instance, I want to run a marathon and I've only put my shoes and all this, but I haven't even ran the marathon yet. This is like going to a restaurant and then getting the water, like, the complimentary water. It's like we haven't even tasted the appetizer or anything. We haven't even tasted any of the entrees. This recovery is still like really peanuts in the grand scheme of things. So when people like to say, oh, this is in the final moment when it comes to Onyx, I don't think about it that way. I mean, Onyx is still very low compared to where it once was last year. So this right here, it's a meaningful recovery, but it's nothing that is too significant in the grand scheme of things. But you know what this showcases to me? This showcases to me a small example as to how things sometimes don't matter until they do. Because if I take a look at, in the case of Onyx, it was forgotten about for quite a while. Then the market recovered slightly and it kind of went along a little bit with the ride. So it kind of showcases that, yes, projects out there, it feels like sometimes they're really forgotten about, but if they keep on building and they keep on launching things, usually if the market were to recover, they don't get forgotten about sometimes. That's just from what I realized. So when it comes to Onyx, I mean, I don't have to keep on holding. I could just leave. I don't have to stay patient. I could just leave, right? It's purely voluntary on my part. But when I take a look at the fundamentals and the positioning when it comes to Onyx in terms of how it's ranked within its own niche, and then also just how low it is comparatively speaking to last year, yeah, I'm just still waiting and I'm still holding. That's kind of it. Keep in mind, Onyx going back to its peak last year, that's a proven, achievement, right? We've already seen very clearly that Onyx was able to reach slightly above a 1 billion market cap last year. We've seen that before. That's no surprise. So when it comes to Onyx, when people like to say, oh, a billion in terms of market cap is impossible or whatever, I mean, we just saw it last year though. And again, Onyx, if it could go back there, I'm going to Sizzler, the restaurant, but that remains to be seen. But nonetheless, I'm just still holding and still waiting, even though I don't have to, but that's just what I'm doing. So when it comes to Onyx, as of right now, I must say that I am quite happy to see this recent recovery. But again, I feel like the journey could maybe still be quite long just because it's still so far away from its peak last year. But you know what? I'll continue to document my journey. I'll continue to give updates when it comes to Onyx, and hopefully y'all stay tuned for future upcoming videos. I want to say thank you so much for watching. It's been Lee the Captain. I'm out. Peace. Bye.